Hi guys, this is Random Chat once again making yet another video. And if you don't know who I am by now, I'm Darren. And today's chat is going to be totally different to what all the rest of my videos have been about. It's not going to be a political one. It's not going to be about poor Keir Starmer, who's getting enough grief as it is. But today's chat is going to be about fashion. And yes, fashion coming from me. But it's going to be a chat about the fashion of today's trends. When I was a kid growing up and in secondary school, most people got into that trend where they followed some sort of fashion. I grew up in the period when it was punks, skinheads, mods, ska boys, trendies, and what we used to call futurists, a tame version of the new romantics. It was just people who were too worried and too scared to put makeup on and everything else to go that far. Now, guess which one I was when I was at school? Slight hint there, isn't it? That was me when I was about 16, 17 on an old Vespa that I was doing up at the time. It was a 1969 model. Could never get the piston for it. Well, didn't have eBay then. So yes, most of us followed a trend. We all had something to say in the way we looked and we were dressed. And one of the things I've noticed with today's trends, there are no people making statements. There are no fashion trends. Well, I say there's no fashion trends. The vast majority of teenagers these days want to ride around on their mountain bikes, all dressed in black, wearing hoodies with the hoods up and covering their faces so they can't be seen, trying to look intimidating, acting like they're some sort of gangster, which is quite sad really. And that is today's trend. There are no one out there making any fashion statements, wanting to stand out and want to look different. And I'm not just talking about the youth of today, I'm talking about people in general. If you look at people now, as you walk down the street, and I've noticed it more as I got a bit older, everybody seems to want to blend in. They just want to merge and disappear in the background. Nobody wants to be seen. Nobody wants to make a statement. Quite a few young people, if they're not dressed in their little black hoodies and black clothing, fully top to bottom with their faces covered up, they're also walking around dressed like they're middle-aged. The amount of people I've seen who are teenagers and in their 20s wearing frumpy tracksuits and things like that, basically dressing like your dad would do as he decided to give up on life and stop following a fashion trend and didn't care what he looked like. Well, that's today's generation all round. My generation wanted to make a statement. We wanted to stand out, wanted to look different. We didn't want to dress like the normal, dull, boring people. So what has happened? Where has the spirit gone in people? Where is that passion to want to follow a trend? But it's not just fashion has gone downhill. You've only got to look at the music industry nowadays. It is totally and utterly crap, and that's the only words I can use. And I think music started to die when programs such as The X Factor and Britain's Got Talent started to air on television, and suddenly the whole music industry died from there. Everybody became factory programmed robots, all sounding the same, dressing the same, and singing the same type of music. And none of them even playing their own instruments. So technically there are no bands anymore. You've only got to look at some of the music nowadays. They're so lazy in what they do. They have to steal music from the 80s mainly and revamp it and claim it's theirs. So it just shows you that the fact that who we are now has gone. Our spirit, our passion has died. So what has happened to the generation now? Why do we not have the passion we once had and having pride in how we looked? Me, I'm still walking around in my polo shirts, as you can see, with braces, and I can't see very well. The old DMs are still there, still making a statement. And some might think, yes, you're a bit too old now to be doing it. But I'm one of those who do not want to blend in the background and be invisible. Don't want to become a chameleon like everyone else, blending in with your background, worried what people think or might say. If you don't like what you see when you see me, then don't look. And it's the same as you don't like what I'm saying, then don't listen, just click off. But my point is nobody has any spirit. And going back to the music of today, there are bands who are still going from the 80s that are still playing music now, still holding concerts. But if you look at the music industry now, starting from the X Factor and Britain's Got Talent period of time onwards, most artists, if you want to call them that, have a lifespan of 6 months, and then they're replaced with somebody totally identical to what they were, sounding in a similar way to what they sounded. How many people can remember who was in the charts last year? Artists now pop up and vanish within a very short time, totally forgotten, never remembered, and you can guarantee in 20, 30 years time, none of their music will be rewritten or being played on the radio stations or being used on television in the films. Whereas music from the past, the 80s, will still remain. It will still be there. We will still be hearing things like Duran Duran and everything out on our television fashion in films, in TV series, and being rewritten. So it shows you there's no passion within not just fashion, but within music. And it's quite a shame, really. And it's a breath of fresh air when you see somebody walking down the streets who do follow a fashion trend. The best example I can give you, there used to be a guy in Trowbridge, I think he's moved now, and he is one of the original punks, still walking around, about my age, maybe a bit younger, usually a blue or a red mohawk, still following true to who he is, which is the original punk. And things like that puts a smile on your face because you know there's still spirit in some people. And there are still a few mods and scooter boys and skinheads around. But it does seem that the vast majority of everyday people do not wish to follow any form of trend. I think the only people these days that do try to make a fashion statement are usually gay people for some reason. Heterosexual people just want to disappear into the ground and hide. It's like they're too scared to stand out and be seen. That is the society we live in, where we just exist, we just walk the streets like zombies. Well, unfortunately for people who come across me, I do not walk the street as a zombie. I do not want to blend in. And like I said, if people don't like the way I look and the way I dress, you don't have to look, you don't have to speak to me. At the end of the day, the way you dress and the way you look doesn't reflect on the person you are. But then fashion's always been that way. You've only got to look how people looked at the punks back in the 70s and even the 80s. Most of them were classified as yobbos. A huge majority of punks came from basically a middle class background. And believe it or not, some of the punks from the 80s took a very long time to get ready before they went out. Believe me, it wasn't a case of just throwing your clothes on and walking out. I used to know a girl called Mandy at the time who was a punk, and it took her at least a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, before she would manage to be able to go out on a weekend. Bleached hair, and basically she would have to lay on the floor so her friend could brush her hair out, so it all panned out around her head at the back like a peacock's plumage on the tail, with all the front all backcombed. She would use huge cans of lacquer just to get her hair to stay stiff and sticking out. So it wasn't a case of just throwing your clothes on and just walking out the door when you were a punk. You had to choose carefully what you wore. Same with the skinheads and the mods and the scooter boys. Basically, clothes had to be ironed, clean, you look smart. You wouldn't go out looking scruffy. And even with the skinheads, I know it looked like they just put the clothes on and went out with their bleached jeans on, the braces, the polo shirts, but that wasn't the case. Everything had to be neatly pressed and ironed. And not only did you have to look good, you had to smell good as well, with the right aftershave on. So it wasn't a case of just not bothering or not caring about how you looked. Believe me, you did care about how you dressed. That's why it would take us so long to get ready before we went out. But if you look at the youth of today, all they do is pick the clothes up, just chuck it on and go out. And half the time they don't care if it's ironed or not. There's no pride there. There's no style. There's no class. They are just these frumpy zombies that walk around the street thinking they look good in their hoodies and their masks, sitting on their mountain bikes, trying to be intimidating, trying to look like they're big, tough men, which is quite funny, really, because if you went up to one of them and said boo, and he was on his own, he'd probably run home crying to his mum. And I know talking about fashion, coming from someone who's dressed the way I am now, might be ironic. You might say, well, what fashion sense do you have, the way you're dressed? And personally, to me, the way I dress is not a fashion. It's my statement. It's who I am. I don't label myself as a skinhead, as a scooter boy, or a mod. I'm just me. I'm just one of these people who don't wish to blend in. Basically, my belief is, it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as there's life in you, make the most of it. And in the immortal words of Steve Strange of, I will never fade to grey. That is my views. I am not going to fade to grey. I'm not just going to blend in and disappear. I will stand out and look different to the day I die. So that's my little random chat on fashion and the people of today who clearly don't have any fashion whatsoever, which is a shame, really. So when you do see somebody who is following a trend, who is trying to make a statement, it is such a breath of fresh air when you walk down the streets. Walked past a lad a few months ago in Chippenham who couldn't have been any older than 20, who was fully making a punk statement in the way he was dressed. And some people might thought he might looked a bit of a yobbo the way he was dressed, but to me he looked fantastic. The way he was dressed, it was a breath of fresh air rather than seeing these dull, boring people walking around. If you're one of these and you do make a fashion fashion statements, then credit to you guys. Keep that spirit within your heart and keep it alive. And hopefully people who see you might feel the need, the urge to suddenly start making their own statement, start standing out, start being noticed. But I can't see the days of the punks, the skinheads, the mods, and the new romantics ever taking a huge boom ever again. Those days are long gone. But then we were a different generation to what there is now. You've only got to look at how we are in modern day times, walking around, heads in our phones, oblivious to everything that's going on around us, keeping our heads down, being quiet, not being seen, not being heard. We do not want to draw attention to ourselves these days, do we? My only response to that is sod that. It is too boring, and life is too short to be boring. So whilst there's life still in you, get out there and make a statement, and put two fingers up to society and say, if you don't like what you see, don't look. So that's it for this little quick video on fashion from me, Darren, Random Chat. So let me know what your views are on today's fashion. Drop some comments on, did you follow a trend as you were growing up? And do you still follow a trend now? And if you want to follow my channel, hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell. And go check out all my other videos if you want. Some of them are a bit political, but I thought I'll do this one today, totally unrehearsed, no script, no planning. I just thought I'll make something totally different to what I've done in the past. So I hope it's to your liking, and if it is, give it that thumbs up. So thank you for watching this video, stay safe, and bye for now until the next video. Cheers guys.